Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. As always, I have a phenomenal guest on my show, somebody who is just leading the charge and the stuff that he's doing that he's going to dive into. We're going to talk a little bit about, but he and I have been pretty good social media friends for quite a while. We've shared a lot with each other over social media, and I'm really excited to finally have him on because he's a busy guy. But my good friend Lawrence, thank you very much for joining me, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Bryan. Thanks so much for having me on the show, and excited to have a chat today.
Awesome. All right. So you're coming all the way from New Zealand, and
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of things, man. You got your hands in a lot of areas that you're just, I mean, you're making headway, and I'm really pleased to see the success that you have going right now.
hmm
But before we get into all that, my listeners, my viewers may not know who you are. Let's talk a little bit about your back history, kind of how you grew up, things you kind of went through,
hmm
and then obviously into what you're doing now, and then also about your kids.
Thanks so much, Bryan. My name's Lawrence Lotze. I was born and raised in Cape Town, South Africa. So you can see the photo if you're watching the video of Table Mountain behind me. That's what I used to wake up and look at most days. And obviously raised in South Africa till my late teens before I moved over to Auckland, New Zealand, where I am now to start and raise a family. But it's just a sort of a backstory on, being raised in South Africa brings you up in a different sort of way and drive and motivation. And I've spoken about this previously on shows. People say, okay, why does it always seem like South Africans are always 100 miles an hour, or always pushing really hard? And it's not that we're pushing for success. You don't realize living in a country where there's such a vast difference between the top or the bottom, the crime rate, the economy, that if you don't try and drive yourself, even as a youngster and as a kid and as a family, the culture and society consumes you. And people are quite weird. I know in America, you're allowed to carry firearms freely if you want, if you've got a license. In South Africa, it's the same. But I remember as a kid growing up with my dad having a firearm on his side, and we went out and went to a restaurant, it's still being there, because that was a lot of the normality that was raised as kids, or in that society. And as well as then being pushed, growing up of always be the best you can be, always do the most, so that when you get to the age, when I was a kid, I didn't realize I'd be leaving the country. But when I got through high school or university, I'd be able to get a really good job, or really be able to take my life that next step, that the country itself wouldn't consume me or take me in like it does for a lot of people that unfortunately don't push hard enough. So it instills this sort of continuous 100-mile-per-hour drive that you have to keep going, you have to keep going, you have to keep going. And it also resonates with one of the big things like my dad taught me about an ever-ready battery. He told me when I was a kid, he said, Lawrence, I want you to be like an ever-ready battery, no matter what you're doing or where you're doing anything in the world. And as a kid, I said to my dad, I said, what are you talking about, an ever-ready battery? He goes, I need you to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're always ready, that what you're seeking or going after or what you want, if that presents itself today, you're ready for it. So if you want to make a sports team as a 15 or 16-year-old, or you want to make, your first 11, first 15, depending what sport you play, and if you want to start a company, if you want to get promoted, or if you want to be successful or come into wealth, you need to be ready for that at any one stage. And that was taught to me very young, as a very young teen, actually. So that installed in me of always wanting to go 100 miles an hour and build off that. And I remember when I was 15, I started my first business. I ran a tuck shop. I think you guys might call them tuck shops, right? We sell food to kids. So I was in boarding school, and I went to a company that would sell food products or chocolates and chips and all the snacks that tuck shops would have, but they couldn't resell them because the box or the packaging was damaged. So they were nothing wrong with them other than they couldn't retail them to the retail stores. So I would go buy them at like 1/5 the cost, take them to my school, and then would on sell them at double what I paid or triple what I paid, which is still half the cost of what the kids could get it at. And at the age of 15, I realized that this started my first thing of actually making real money, and I was making a lot of times more in a week than a lot of my parents' friends were making a month, because I had a couple of hundred kids in the hostel, And outside of the lunchtime or outside of the evening time, I was the only one access to foods and snacks. And it got so big that I literally had 5 or 7 first what we would call grade 9 or first year in high school. I had them running around literally getting my orders, taking orders, and completing a whole lot of stuff like that. And this was as 15 or 16, because that was instilled of find something, do it, and always keep going with that. Which is a great learning and part of it, but also then drove this big thing that became and almost consumed me, now that I look back of it, into my late teens and 20s. So successful at that. I was successful at sport, making rep teams and national level sport teams. Went into university, and then got into my early 20s. Met my wife when I came over to New Zealand on first year. Met her here. I went back to South Africa to finish my university degree. And we finally decided, okay, cool, we'll come back to New Zealand to raise a family, because we didn't want to raise a family in South Africa, just with the violence and the cultural differences and all the rest of it. But to me, it was still like, okay, go 100 miles an hour, go full speed, crush everything you can do. So I started setting myself goals going, okay, young family. Got married when I was 23. My daughter was a year later. My son was a couple of years later. I was in my mid-20s. I was like, okay, great. Become self-employed. That happened a couple of years later. Buy my first property. That happened a couple of years later. Become a property investor. That happened again a couple of years straight after that. And all of this thing in my 20s was just go, go, go. And everything that I put in front of me fundamentally led me, I got it out of the way. I knocked it out of the way. But then the ego just started consuming this, going, I have a goal, I knock it out of the way. I have a goal and knock it out of the way. And it's not going to the stage that by my late 20s, literally anything I had said I would do, I'd done it. And it was like, I'm unstoppable. I'm amazing. So the ego monster of myself, I think back of what I would have been in my 20s, I would have been a real dick.
Right.
And not a pleasant person, unfortunately, to be around. But that was just from me taking a lot of what I'd learned in my teenage years, and then never been humbled. But the humbling came. Don't worry, the humbling does come. The humbling comes in my 30s, and it comes massively. But it's a real interesting thing of when you raise with kids and going in 20s, of going on one pendulum, you almost always have to be humbled to understand how it works both sides, to understand where you find your place and so forth.
Wow. Gosh. Okay. So there's a lot to unpack there. Let me ask you this though, before we got in,
Yeah.
how old are your kids?
So my daughter just turned 14 and my boy turns 11 in about a week.
Oh, so you're right in the thick of things right now with the teenage years.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Let's just say to any parent, I'm trying to smile and say the
Right.
great years.
Right. Well, I'm just going to say good luck with the teenagers, man. All right. So let's kind of rewind a little bit. I mean, you're
Yep.
talking about, I love the ever ready, analogy. I really love
Mhm.
that. That's cool. But you're growing up in an environment where it's constantly go at 100%, 100
Mhm.
miles an hour. I mean, for a young child, for a young man, that's got to be pretty overwhelming, because you find yourself essentially trying to compete at a high level in everything
Mhm.
that you do.
Yep.
And for a young man or a young child, that's a lot to take on. That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, did your dad help you through that kind of challenge, or was there something else, or how did you get through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. Everything becomes very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
The saying "keeping up with the Joneses"
Mm-hmm.
is a very big sort of South African cultural thing, right? When she became late in teens, who's got the better car? Who's got the bigger house? Who's got the looks like better performing? And it's all BS, because it's all literally fake money and you doing that sort of stuff. But yeah, growing up as a kid, I I was lucky that I was decent. I was really good at sport, at the sport I played for. So I played national level baseball. I played baseball for most of my teens and in my 20s, as well as rugby union. So I was good at the sport level to be able to go rep level and get up there. And I had a bit of brain. So I could push myself into those levels, and maintain it and control it and push through from there. But it doesn't mean everyone else can. A lot of a lot of kids I saw went up to a level and then just couldn't handle it and walked away. A friend of mine I grew up through high school was one of the best kids I'd ever seen in rugby union in the sport. I think he would have gone on to be one of the greatest players if he ever carried on. He did it through high school. And as soon as he left high school and got into university and fundamentally moved out of mom and dad's house and out of mom and dad's control, he gave up the sport. But he was literally one of the best players I'd ever seen. And it was because he did it because it was forced on him and that was the expectations. But now he was one that was smart enough to realize that as I step away and I can make my own rules, I can decide if I want to continue it or not. And unfortunately, you get the strong kids that can make those decisions and you get the other ones that don't, and then they just get consumed by it and taken in by it, and then they just get knocked down and knocked down and knocked down, and when they get to 19, 20, going to university, they just literally almost flutter in the world and don't know where they find themselves.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I've coached sports
Mm-hmm.
for many, many years, 20 plus years
Yep.
in coaching. My boys are 24 and 21, and I coached them since they were 4 years old all the way up through high school.
Yeah.
And even after my boys were in college, I was still coaching at the high school level. But I do see that during my years of coaching, I saw and witnessed firsthand parents pushing their kids so
Mm-hmm.
hard. Go, 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 be the best, work,
Yeah.
practice, practice, practice. I mean, they're just drilling these, for me, it was at the time, it was baseball, just drilling baseball. They're
Yeah.
constantly on the move and the kids can't keep up. The kids are
Yeah.
they're getting to a level where they're getting burnt out. You can see it. You can see the
Mm-hmm.
anguish on their face. You can see the frustration in their face, how tired they are at practices or games because they're constantly being pushed by their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, you're right. It happens. It gets to a point where, they hit those teenage years, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, that they are so burnt out that
Mm-hmm.
they can't achieve anything else. They just can't, because they're so tired. They're so burnt out from the sport. They quit the sport completely. They
Mm-hmm.
start to rebel,
Yep.
different things like that start to happen. So I think it's a very good point in that it's great, it's healthy to push our kids to be
Mm-hmm.
competitive and want to achieve, but over pushing them and almost living through their eyes, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? That kind of mentality as a parent is so detrimental to them, especially when they start to become older and start to understand what's really going on. And I'm sure for you, just being that young boy,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm sure you kind of felt that at some point. Not so much from your own parents, but just the fact that you had to keep up with everything moving around you to try to compete.
Yeah, I mean, my dad was my coach in baseball. My dad played national level, so did I. Growing up, I mean, at 15, 16, me and friends have been scouted in South Africa from the American Scouts coming over. I was good in South Africa. I was an American Scout quality good. So there was a lot of that to keep up. And then there was the added pressure that my dad's the coach. But my dad's an old military man, so he was like, "Hey, I'm the coach. Therefore, everyone's going to assume you in the team because you're the coach. Therefore, you're going to have to be twice as good as expected for me to even pick you." But he installed a way in the sense of if you perform and do it, you will have the opportunity. But one of the big things that he did as a coach, because of my boy, I coach sport now, so I've started coaching sort of last 4 or 5 years since my son and my daughter were young enough in the teams and taken up. But one of the big things that he did is, as much as it was still competitive in South African win, he still ensured that there was this caring, almost parent nature to it. So I remember growing up as a teenager. So the last time he coached me, I would have been 16 or 17. So you're talking 20 plus years ago. But he made a safe zone for the kids growing up there now. So my dad, that's getting close to 70, when he gets a birthday, I get the friends back in South Africa calling me up and going, "Hey, how's coach doing?" They still call him coach to this day. They still talk about the stories because as much as he pushed to become better in the team, he still gave that safe zone of, hey, I'm sort of I'm still caring about you and looking after you. And that's a lot of what I try to do with my own teams that I coach. My boy, obviously being in New Zealand, where they're not very big on being competitive at a young age. So I go there wanting to really push the teams, and the parents look at me and go, "Hold on, you're a bit too aggressive for my liking." That's why the parents that are still with me have been with me from day one, and they totally understand that. But I built a good enough relationship up with the kids that the kids come over. My dad's actually joined me now this year,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
he's now coaching with me soccer. So it's my dad, myself, and my son. We coach my son's soccer team, so 3 generations together. And the boys come over to my dad, to grandpa, and they give him a hug and everything. So it builds again that whole safe zone as much as we're pushing. And I think sometimes that's where it's lacking. So you have that, I want to be better, or I want to push the team. But on the one side, it's, I want to push the team at all costs
Right.
and with no understanding of the child, compared to, hey, I want to push the team, but I'm going to give them a safe space to fail, and I'm going to support them when they fail. And that's sort of that missing delta. And that's where you see the unique stories of the coaches that make a difference. If you go and look at all the ESPN 30-30 coaches that they followed through baseball or gridiron over in America, the difference was that coach had full respect with the people in the team, compared
Mhm.
to only having one linear focus of driving to success.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that's exactly, I mean, how I coached was
Mm-hmm.
listen, I'm one of the most competitive coaches on the field or on the sideline. I coached
Yeah,
basketball in my later years, but
yeah,
I'm one of the most competitive coaches out there. I want to win that, and I want to
yeah,
encourage the players that they want
yeah,
to win, right? But I'm not a win at all
yeah.
cost coach. If it
Mm-hmm.
means, something, an impact on my players, a negative impact on my players,
Yeah,
I don't care what the score says.
yeah,
As long
yeah.
as my players, I've always told my players, as long as you give 100% effort,
Mm-hmm.
you're out there giving it everything that you got. And if the score doesn't go our way, then it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't our day.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I can take that. What I can't take as a coach is if you're not giving 100%, you're
Mm-hmm.
not giving your best effort, you're what they would say half assing it, right?
Yeah,
Through the game or the practice, and we lose, then I'm going to be upset because I know that you could have given more.
yeah.
So that was that competitive side of me that pushed them, but again, not to the point where it's detrimental to the player. A player always could come up to me and talk to me if they had a
Mm-hmm.
feeling or an issue that they were dealing with. They could always come up and talk to me. I had players reach out to me after they graduated high school
Yeah.
and that were lost and didn't know what to do with
Mm-hmm.
their life, and would call me up and say, "Hey, I just need some guidance." And I would help them through it. Those kind of things are great. I've been at dinner with my wife and had players that were waiters or waitresses at the restaurant come up to me and go, "Coach, I haven't seen you forever. How you been?" I'm like, "Wait a minute, you're a waiter here? What? Like, what's going?" I'm old now.
Yeah,
So no, those kind of things are great. And all my players still call me coach. It's just natural. They
yeah.
just all still call me coach. But there was that separation too with my sons.
Mm-hmm.
With my sons, they knew that when I was on the field or on the basketball court, I wasn't dad anymore.
Yeah,
They couldn't come to me as dad. I was coach, and they had to respect that. And they did.
yeah,
When we got in the car and we were on our way home, then the dad hat goes back on,
yeah.
and I can be their dad again. So I'm really proud of you, dude. That's awesome that you're coaching now. Your kids, your boy, and you
Yeah,
got your dad involved. That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, the coach dad one's a real interesting one. Again, my dad instilled that on me when I was at baseball. It was the same thing. When I'm at the field, I'm coach. So I called my dad coach through all my time when we were at the sports field, and obviously as soon as we left, it was dad. My boy obviously just turning 11 now. So I've been coaching him football or soccer, as you call it. What'll be 4 or 5 years I've been going it, and only in the last couple of years, maybe last year and this year, because obviously at 7 or 8 they can't really comprehend it. I said to him, understand that when we're here, I'm coach, and dad, because a lot of times he would come over to me wanting dad on the
Mm-hmm.
field and wanting to
Right.
have that interaction, right?
Right.
And I'm like, hey, I can't be dad right now. I've got to be coach. And that's the sort of stuff of what happens. Is it's a real interesting dilemma as with a young kid. But I think there's a really good learning there that if you can teach a young kid to have that separation or understanding that at this situation, this is what the person has, because then it teaches them as they get older in their teens going, hey, a person at home could be like this, but at work they're like this, and in a different social situation they're like this, and can understand the separation or what they need to understand, so they can understand how to interact. And sort of really good social skills to knowing of, hey, I can't interact with some person the same way everywhere because the social interaction we're having right now might not be suited for it.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, learning to separate or designate a person in the area that you're in or the environment that you're in, knowing who they are and how to respond is crucial, especially when you're coaching sports. So any dads
Mm-hmm.
out there, if you're coaching and you're on that field or court or whatever, and your son or daughter is playing, they are your player. They are not
Yeah.
your son or daughter. They are not your starting player. They are not your captain unless they've earned it.
Yeah.
That is 100% the way you have to run things. Otherwise, you lose the respect of your players and you lose the respect of the players' parents that are
Correct.
on that team. So keep that separation in check for you as parents. And yeah, that's all I'll say about that. That's me getting off my high horse. So, anyways, so you've got a son and a daughter now that are
Mm-hmm.
in those teenage years or about to be in those teenage years. I know there's a lot of challenges that parents face when they have kids that are going through those teenage struggles or those
Mm-hmm.
challenges with the different mentally, physically, emotionally, the different things that they're going through. Give me some key points or advice that you could help parents out with that you may be going through yourself and having to navigate through. What advice would you give to parents that have teenagers that they're kind of struggling with right now?
Um, so again, if you think of my upbringing in South Africa, where it was you had to perform, you had to do everything I do at 100 miles an hour. And then coming over to New Zealand and raising my kids here with culturally, it's not like that. It's a lot more relaxed and it's one of the most like calm countries in the world. It was funny, I was talking to someone it's almost like everything's 10 years behind. Like
Mm,
in South Africa, you want to be married in your 20s. In New Zealand, you want to be married in your 30s.
mm,
You want to start a business in your 20s here, you want to start your business in your 30s, and everything's just a lot more calm and stuff like that. So I've had to learn a lot of that, unfortunately, with my own kids going, okay, let's go, it's push, 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 and going, well, it's not actually as much as needed. Real big learnings from me, from my kids is I've got a real strong-minded daughter. She's very much a carbon copy of myself, real strong-minded and stubborn and everything else. So I had to learn that the hard way that she will, she will fight back or bite back and things like that. But also trying to learn the things picking up from her is a lot of times she doesn't understand why it's that way,
mm,
or we learn, like doesn't understand why I feel that way, or I'm not happy at the moment, or why I'm not happy at the moment. And it's just being able to pick up from that and saying, okay, is anything wrong? Anything we do? No. I just want be left alone. Like I went out on the weekend and she said, hey, I'm going to have an introvert day. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I just want to be alone today, quiet. And we went to a party with 20 kids and she sat by herself, dead quiet. She was first on a device and then she was drawing. She loves doing drawing and animation. That's sort of one of her future things she would love to do. I'm doing that. And I was actually struggling with it because I'm like, hey, she's not interacting socially, right? So I contacted my wife and said, hey, what's going on? She needs to be a social butterfly. As parents, we want our kids to be social butterflies, right? And she said to me, she goes, Lawrence, she's happy. She's not being naughty. She's not upset. She's not making anyone else upset. Just let the child be. And then left her 20, 30, half an hour later, some kids came over, come and hang out. But that's the sort of stuff picking up as new teen parents. I would say that like my 14 and 11 is sometimes they want to do stuff just because they want to do it, and you might not think it's what they need to do, but as long as they're not hurting someone, they are happy and they're content, just let them do it.
mm. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I would have been in the same position as you, Lawrence. I would have
Yeah.
been like, what? Okay, there's something got to be going on with her. I mean, there's something's bothering her, or
Yep.
she's got an issue she's trying to work through.
Yep.
And I would have been the same way. I'd have been like calling my wife, going, what's going on? What do we do?
Yeah.
Because this is unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah, where I think it can get to a situation where you need to maybe address it is if it's happens a lot,
Hmm.
because then you're looking at signs of depression
Mm.
or anxiety,
Yeah.
stress, things like that. So if it's a regular thing where it's happened almost daily,
Yeah.
um, then it's an issue. Or like you said, where she's lashing out,
Hmm.
misbehaving, or harming herself or
Yeah.
others, those kind of things. So yeah, that's where we need. But I agree with your wife. I think if look, she's a good kid. She's got a
Hmm.
good head on her shoulders. She just wants to be alone and just kind of, in a sense, meditate, right? She
Yeah.
just kind of wants to be alone and meditate with her thoughts and her drawings and all that stuff. And she's not doing any harm. Then,
Hmm.
and she's good, healthy, natural. It's not stressed out about, I mean, yeah, then I guess, all right, we'll let her be.
Yeah. I mean, if you look back at it as an adult, you go, I wish I could just sit alone and do nothing, right?
Right.
But, but, but at that moment, I'm like, that's not what should be doing, right? We need to always be, and this is unfortunately again, it's that, like I said, that mindset in South Africa. It's always, hey, you got to be progressing forward. Hey, you got to be doing more. You got to be evolving and growing, and that's for me. Personally, that's sort of the hardest things I've got to learn. Where my wife the whole time, or multiple times a week, unfortunately, go, Lawrence, just like slow down, like calm down. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly normal, because I want to see this quick shuffle. And then I know at one stage I'm gonna want to see this quick shuffle, and then I want to turn around and go, I just want to see my kid again. Because you've got this dilemma of, hey, you want to see progress, but not realizing that if you push progress too much, you literally push the kid to become a young adult, and then the kid's gone, right?
Right.
And animation, your imagination is the biggest thing that keeps you as a kid. So one of the things that we do in my household, to try and keep our kids as long as possible, my daughter and my son, is we have very big Disney family here. We love our Disney. We love our Disney and animation movies. So we've done the theme parks overseas in Florida. Have traveled and gone over to Australia with these big ones there as well. So we'll sit down and have animation movie nights, or we'll still go to the cinemas and watch all of those. My son's getting into Marvel. We'll go to the Comic-Con in New Zealand, so we call it
Oh, cool.
Armageddon. So my kids will get up into cosplay. So we keep the fantasy as well as long as possible. And I said it was super cute. On the weekend, we went to a shop, and my daughter had won a plushie, a soft toy out of a claw machine. And then Friday or Saturday night, I went and checked on the kids, and she was asleep, and she was still cuddling. As this 14-year-old girl that wants to be cool, she was still cuddling the soft little toy. So I went to the wife and I said, hey, to me, that's still really special, because it still shows, hey, she's not, as much as in public, she doesn't want to be seen like with a plushie per
Yeah.
se, she still feels like she can cuddle and have a soft toy with her when she sleeps.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'll make sure to cut that part out of the podcast so that way she or her friends or whatever don't see it, right?
Oh no, she's all good like that, and all the rest.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, honestly, anything that you can do together, like you said, as a family, if you guys all enjoy it and you guys all have that same similarity where you guys
Mm.
keep it, within the family, you guys enjoy it, you guys love to spend time together doing those things, then keep doing it as long as you can. Even,
Yeah.
when they start to become those older teens that are into early adulthood. That's really cool. Awesome. Now, when you're talking, I mean, you got podcasts right now.
Hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about that. And do your kids know about your podcast? Do they know how it works and all that kind of stuff? I mean, because I've had my boys on my show.
Yeah. So my kids are well aware. So at the moment I'm currently building my dream family home. So about actually 50 yards that way. So I'm just in a property next door at the moment. So I'll be setting up a new studio there. Even though I use a different studio when I record my own show, but that'll actually be for them. They both want to be YouTubers, as most teenage kids want to be, right? They both want to produce content. So my daughter's actually got a YouTube channel that I started many years ago, and it's still bigger to this day than my own social media brand.
Oh,
She had
wow.
mer- she had merch that sold, and she had a big channel. I think it was 3.5 or 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. Good few 100,000 views and stuff like that. So they're well aware of content and the podcast scene. I mean, at one stage, I even did an episode specifically just for my family. It was totally against my niche. I had Daniel Ross, the guy that voices Donald Duck.
Mm-hmm.
I had him on the show. So my podcast to anyone out there is fundamentally sort of business, business property, and a little bit of social media in it. That's sort of where I sit. So having a voiceover actor for Disney on my podcast was totally like not the right ones, but that one was close to the family. So I actually got my kids, they loved it. I got my kids to give me questions, and I actually asked questions through the episode from my kids, and I asked friends of my kids, did you want to ask Donald Duck some questions? And we added this into the episode. So they absolutely loved it.
Cool.
So how would I say, nice driving up my views for 14 and 15-year-olds to go and watch a question that they asked on a podcast, right? So, but yeah, they're well aware of the podcast and everything else at the moment, and the content creation side.
That's awesome. How cool is that? Very cool. Yeah, I mean, if you're my son started a podcast just a few months ago. It's on sports. He's all about,
Yeah.
both my boys are all into sports, and my younger son, he can tell you every sports statistic, player. He knows their history. Like, he has just this insanely amount of knowledge, sports knowledge. And he just taught, it's called the Never Lost podcast. And he just talks about upcoming things that are taking place, whether they're trades or, how a team's going to look in a certain situation. He gives off, it's about 20 minutes or so each episode, and he just gives off random information about the various sports. And
Yeah.
it's really cool. And now he did that. I believe, I like to take a little bit of credit. He did that because of my show. And he knows how, my show's been going now for 3 years. He knows that I enjoy it. He knows it's a lot of fun. So he tried it out, and he actually enjoys doing it. So really, really cool. I can't believe your daughter's outscoring you on the YouTube space side. That's awesome. That's got to be a proud dad moment, sort of.
Sort of, yeah. I was waiting for the sort of, right. I'm working this 3 years trying to go like full time across my social media brand and my business side of things, and I still can't catch.
Well,
But
she's gotta like interview you on her YouTube then.
Oh yeah, so so we haven't done anything in a good few months, so we're waiting for the new studio, and then she's going to pivot from her channel was called Mia's Adventures, so she did daily adventures. We filmed all our theme parks, and she did like a big stint of a minute in my life every day for like 60 days. So we did all of this stuff, and it just grew up in that. And obviously, because it's to anyone, any parent out there, because it's a kid specific channel, it automatically gets distributed to kids as well. Compared to my social media channel, I don't say, because on my show, sometimes the language is unfiltered and some of the topics are a little bit edgy and on the point. I don't say my content is made for kids. Kids can consume it, but automatically it means that I'm not like Mr. Beast that gets automatically pushed to the billions of kids, right?
Right.
And just as a note to any parent or someone that's listening or watching that's thinking about content, don't think I can say my content's safe for kids on YouTube specifically and have edgy or on the line piece of content, because one person complains and they'll shut you down. They won't even care. They'll be like, sorry, you said it was safe for kids and you spoke about violence or guns or you swore or something like that. And they just don't play around with that stuff.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit, Lawrence, because I know you have a lot of knowledge as far as how the algorithms work, especially with YouTube. But, parents, they give their kids these tablets, especially younger kids. They give these kids these tablets or iPhones, whatever, to keep them occupied because the parent's so busy on something else. Here, just take my iPhone and play with it. And they go on YouTube, and kids don't know what they're looking up. They just start playing around with different things and watching funny videos and stuff. But it actually can impact the algorithm in what they see and view, and can actually be detrimental to them as far as their viewing, what the things that they're witnessing.
100%. The strongest, I know in America, the American community per se is not a big fan of TikTok. Let's just say that. I know the government's looking at it because they're worried about it being Chinese owned, but let's say in the content viewing for parents, for kids at the moment, you got three sort of big places. You got the TikTok game, you got the YouTube Shorts, which is exactly the same as TikTok. It's just the YouTube version. So my son, that's where he watches his content. My daughter, being 14, I've said to her she can go on the TikTok side, and then you've obviously got the Instagram Reels, which you don't really find kids as much on because it's not as cool, but it's fundamentally similar content. The algorithms are 100% correct, can pick you up. TikTok is the strongest algorithm, I believe, at the moment, that it can pick up your views, your opinions within a couple of minutes. So if you got TikTok right now and you go and search the data podcast and podcasting and go and spend 5 minutes just searching these content, within a couple of hours, that's all that you're going to see on your feed. Right. The algorithm is so strong because it picks up what you're looking at, how long you're looking at it, and everything else. And that's how it works. The YouTube Shorts and Instagram is the similar. I just don't feel that it is as strong. So it means it doesn't kick in as quickly. It takes a bit of time of continuous longer watching at the moment. The reason why YouTube per se at the moment, I've seen in a bit of research I've done, is not as strong and looking in. They've actually got a big problem in the YouTube world, that they've got long form content that we do. And then you've got the real short form content that your YouTubers and the TikTok stars and they do, and they can't get the algorithm you can't use the same algorithm for the two different contents, and they haven't been able to build a separate one. So on TikTok, it is only short form content. It's a one algorithm for one platform. Where YouTube side, it's two sides of the business, and they're still struggling on that one. But fundamentally, to your question and your note, it is, kids can go down there and can go down a rabbit hole without you even realizing. So if you do have young kids, let's say, I would say even 11, 10 or younger, you do get something called YouTube for Kids, which is fundamentally, it's a YouTube app. It is only YouTube videos that are safe and marked as for kids and for kids only. So they can't search non-kid related content. So good few years, this was the only apps my kids could have access to from content viewing.
But that's good to know. And I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't know that there was, a format on YouTube where you can structure it to where your kids will only pick up kid content or kid friendly information or content. That's good to know. I do agree with you when it comes to the TikTok Reels too, but I don't see a lot of, based on my experience and, just hearing and being around my boys and all that kind of stuff. Instagram is just, kids aren't as active on Instagram as they used to be. It's more, driven towards social media people and influencers and things like that. Kids are real prevalent or active on TikTok or even Snapchat is another big one. But I do agree. What were you going to say? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you just mentioned Snapchat. Yeah, so Snapchat was in play a good few years ago, but it's sort of it's still there. It's fallen off the boat. Yeah, so Snapchat does have a TikTok version. I can't remember the official term for it. So so again, it's another place for people to sit. But it depends on the age of the kids. So I would always find that it's more TikTok. And then sort of YouTube short side is where the kids sort of the hover, and then on Snapchat's a little bit there as well, but that's, I think, slowly going backwards from what I can see.
Yeah. The whole point in all this is, and I'm glad that we kind of stumbled our way onto the social media side of things with our kids, because the whole point of it is, hey, it's okay to let your kids look at streaming devices. They can be productive things to play with or see or look at. There could be productive things to do with those things. However, on the flip side of it, as parents, you should always monitor what your kids are doing, because even you may have, your daughter's a superstar. She's a great young lady. But if you're not monitoring how do you know she's not looking at stuff that she shouldn't be looking at, right? So as parents, same thing. My kid's a rock star. He gets straight A's. He's just a really good kid, never gets into trouble. It doesn't mean he's not looking at stuff he shouldn't be looking at. You still need to monitor. You're not being overprotective. You just want to protect them.
Yeah. So there's also something else. So again, depending on how parents have in their household got to the IT setup. So you either you'll have your Wi-Fi provider. So you might just have a connect. I'm going to go real simple with the explanation here. You might just have your Wi-Fi connected to your house, to a router, and everyone connects to that. And there's no control application right? That controls how the Wi-Fi is distributed, who can connect. And then you might get something like Google Wi-Fi, which is and it's a couple of access points, and it gives you an app to control the entire house's Wi-Fi. So you can control who's on there, who's not on there. You can set up all rule sets. You can set up timestamps. You can actually kick devices off. So depending on where parents sit. So on the application side of things, you with the better versions, you can actually implement stuff like Google Safe Search. There's a product called Google Safe Search that a lot of parents don't realize and it brings in a kid-safe searchability on Google. So it doesn't block stuff. It just prevents kids from searching the adult stuff, the R18 stuff, the violent stuff. You can't search that. So you can type it in, just nothing will come back. Google Safe Search will prevent that coming through. So that could be put on either on a laptop. You can have it switched on in the settings. You can have it switched on the application that's controlling your Wi-Fi. And there's a lot of products out there. I can imagine in America, there's vastly more products that you can implement, but parents need to just realize that actually those things do exist.
Right.
I'm not saying install something on your kid's phone so you can stalk and watch. What I'm saying is put a holistic rule set across the household or the umbrella or whatever it is doing to ensure that they're not going way outside the box.
Right. No, absolutely right. Yeah. You don't want to be a helicopter parent. You don't want to you just don't want to stalk your kids to a point where now they're going to start to, and kids can be sneaky. They can learn ways to get around things. You don't want to cause them to have to go down those roads. So what you're talking about and this may be, some parents may not be technically savvy to figure this stuff out, but it's actually very easy to do. You can Google the stuff and learn about it, or purchase software that can help you with it, or even through Google. It's very, very simple to do. Awesome. I'm glad we talked about that because that's super important. Very good. Lawrence, before I let you go, my listeners want to look you up, learn a little bit more about you, more about your podcast, more about the things you're doing. Best placed for them to do that, my friend.
So I exist on literally, I believe, every single social platform out there. So Lawrence Lotze, if you Google, you drop me into your social channel, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, TikTok, even trying to do something on Twitter. But wherever you are, you can find me and reach out. I'm most active across Instagram and LinkedIn. At the moment, as those are my platforms that I focus on. I'm trying to grow for the next couple of months. So reach out to me there, and I'm always available for a chat or discussion or any questions or queries. I love interacting with people, so don't be shy and reach out.
Awesome. Well, listen, Lawrence, I appreciate our friendship, brother. I appreciate what you're doing, the dad that you are, the businessman that you are, the things that you're doing on your podcast and your show. I love it, man. I learned a lot from you just through our social media interactions. I learned a lot from you, and I just appreciate our friendship. Thank you very much for being on today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bryan.
Well, guys, listen, you want to check out Lawrence, see what he's doing, check out his podcast, make sure you subscribe to it. He is very truthful in what he says. He's very active on his social media platforms, and he will respond if you send him a message, you have a question about things, you need some help, even in real estate, you need some help in those areas. He's more than willing to answer the questions. He's very active on there. So make sure you guys are checking out what he's doing. He's got a great following, very, very successful YouTube channel and podcast. So I highly recommend you check him out. He's been a good friend of mine, and he's encouraged me a lot and helped me along the ways with my YouTube stuff as well. So thank you again to my good friend Lawrence. And as always, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel or my podcast, please make sure you do that so you don't miss important guests like Lawrence on my show each and every week. So thank you guys very much for being here. Thanks once again to my good friend Lawrence. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Dad Up. Thanks so much for listening to the episode. Make sure you guys subscribe to my podcast and YouTube channel. And please do me a favor, leave a rating and a review. Would love to hear from you and see what you think of the show. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes each week. Until next time, thank you for listening to the Dad Up Podcast.